And then God said, I need two privileged, opinionated white men to start a motorsports podcast from the Midwest. And then Irreverent was born. Welcome to Irreverent. I'm your host for today, Levi, joined by my hopeless captain named Eli. Eli, say hi.
Wait, hold on. I'm the captain? I thought you were the host.
I'm co-captained. You're the co-captain, I'm the regular captain. Kind of like on Zoom. It's like the host and the co-host, but it's captain and co-captain.
Oh.
This episode's so good. So, this week, before we get into the episode, just a quick sneak peek. We're going to talk about the Canadian Grand Prix, which what I hear was a good race, but I didn't watch the highlights because I'm not a good host. We're going to go into NASCAR after that. We have some stuff to talk about with Sonoma, SVG, and maybe a past Monster Energy Series Cup champion. Lastly, we'll get into some news about, we got some IndyCar stuff going on, we got some Formula E stuff going on, and there may be something else going on that I don't know about. All I know is Eli's going to rant about it, and I'm going to be very upset.
I don't know how upsetting it will be.
I'm probably going to cry. Yeah, I'm probably going to cry. And lastly, we may or may not have an Eli 5 segment. Actually, we will have an Eli 5 segment. As to who Eli will be mansplaining to is to be determined. So that's what you got to look forward to this episode this week. And I'll turn it over to my co-captain Eli so he can talk about the race at Canada.
Yeah, so our original plan, we mentioned, was going to be to cover Road America. That race ended up being a mess. To be fair, so did the F1 race, but for a good reason, unlike Road America. Because what happened is Canada decided to have sporadic rain, which in Canada means really good racing. So, for the first time in, I forget exactly how long it's been. I think it's been around 20 years. Maybe longer. No, it's been longer, because it was, oh, what's his name? The circuit's literally named after his dad. Villeneuve.
Oh, Gilles Villeneuve?
Yeah, his son. Yeah.
Jacques
Villeneuve.
Jacques.
That's right. So, for the first time since him, we had identical pole times.
I didn't know that.
Yep. George Russell and Max Verstappen set identical times. Both I believe it was a 1 minute 12 dead. Yeah. Of course, Russell set his time first. So, he took pole with Max starting in second. But overall, the top 10 spread was less than a second.
If I can interject, I think that's just British bias. I think that's why they gave George the pole. British bias.
Trust me, it ceases to go his way later on.
Uh-oh, British bias didn't work.
He pulled a George a couple of times. But yeah, no,
Rock.
It ended up being an incredibly chaotic qualifying session. Perez, after signing his brand new 1+1 year contract, decided to go out in Q1 again. I don't think that +1's going to be exercised. Just saying. But overall,
I think...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Mic issues. I was just going to say, I feel like a good candidate at this point would be Logan Sargent.
We'll get into that in the news segment, but there's some speak of going on about what's going on with certain seats. But actually, speaking of Sargent, first time ever he made it to Q2.
And Perez did. So is this the 7th time Sargent's beaten Perez in qualifying?
No, it was the 6th. This made the 6th.
This is the 6th. Okay.
Yeah.
That's depressing.
So, he was... It gets even funnier. He was 0.08 of a second off of Sainz. Sargent was. Yeah, so both Ferraris went out in Q2. This was an incredibly mixed up session. So
I saw that.
the qualifying order ends up being Russell, Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, with just over a tenth of a second between them. Rounding out in the top 5 is Daniel Ricciardo, followed by Alonso, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Stroll, and Albon. So that is both of the V-Carbs, both of the Aston Martins, and a Williams in the top 10.
That is a moody teenager of a qualifying session.
I know, right? So then we have both Ferraris, Leclerc and Sainz in 11 and 12, Sargent in 13th, K-Mag in 14th, keep an eye on him, Gasly in 15th, Perez in 16th, Bottas in 17th, Ocon in 18th, Hulkenberg in 19th, and Zhou Guanyu in 20th. Now, the reason I said keep an eye on Magnussen is we get to race day. And right before the race starts, it rains hard. So they do their scouting laps, and it looks really bad. So everybody goes to the full wet tires. It's not raining anymore, but the track is really wet. And then Haas... No, I'm getting this backwards. I think. If only I could find...
I don't have a way to fill space, really, besides the fact that...
Just rant about qualifying for a second.
Yeah, I think I'll rant, or not rant, but just talk about how I feel like I've been watching some old NASCAR races at Atlanta because listeners will soon find out I'm so ADHD that I change favorite motorsports every 6 months. So maybe in 6 months I'll be talking more about F1, but right now, like, I feel like when it comes to anything that has to do with grip levels, whether that be a worn out racetrack, rain, or anything that has to do with drivers needing different tires or going on different strategies or needing more grip, usually results in a better race. I remember we were talking last episode about how good the NASCAR low downforce package is. And it's just, it always has something to do with grip. Like whenever there's immense variations in grip, and the key is not to have tire fall off or tire wear.
Yeah.
No. You don't want tire wear. You want tire fall off because tire fall off makes the race interesting. Tire wear just makes everyone die.
Yeah, so what you're gonna notice as we go through the race is the thing that makes this race so interesting is how fast it changes. Because what we end up getting is a fairly hot day with rain, but not many clouds. So it's quick down spurts and then sunny. So, yeah, I got it backwards. It absolutely pours down with rain right before. Everybody expects it to dry faster than it is, so everyone starts on inners. Except Haas, who start both of their cars on full wets. It's also worth noting that Bottas and Zhou, they made changes to their cars, so they both started from the pit lane. But the result of this is that by the end of lap 1, Kevin Magnussen makes it into the top 5.
Wow.
Remember, man started in 14th.
Hey, grip is everything.
He did this without taking anyone out, mind you.
Oh, now that's impressive.
Yeah. Otherwise we'd be talking about his race ban. But no, yeah, he goes completely flying. And Hulkenberg, is decent, but it is nowhere near as insane as what K-Mag's pulling off. But
yeah,
the thing is, the track starts drying quickly. So obviously it doesn't last, and then Haas has to pit, and that's basically where they leave all relevance for the day. Still, K-Mag managed to get away with another weekend without a race ban.
We'll take it.
Yeah.
I like me some K-Mag myself, yeah.
But another thing that happened off the line is Russell managed to keep the lead over Verstappen. And
for what was it? 20 laps, 21 laps?
I forget what lap the changeover happened. I believe he loses the lead somewhere, like you were saying, but he doesn't lose the lead to Max. He loses it to Norris because he pits. I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember if it's because he pits or... No. Norris overtakes... Yeah. Basically, Norris gets past both of them. So, Max manages to use the opening that Norris made to get past Russell. So, it then switches to, I think it's lap, like you said, lap 21. It goes Norris, Verstappen, Russell. Which, again, what we're seeing here is an actual fight for the lead. Now, another thing worth noting is fairly early on, Ferrari comes over the radio and says to Leclerc, you're having engine problems. You're losing time on the straights.
Ooh. Yeah, no, okay. I did have my, I know I didn't watch the race, but I had it kind of going on my app, like live scoring and stuff. And I want to just quickly say, going into the race, I really wanted the Ferraris to do well because of how quickly they were closing in on the Constructors' Championship. And after this happened, I'm like, rats.
Well, some funny things ended up happening. So, I believe it was Miami. Leclerc's race engineer got promoted. So he has a new one. They do not seem to be getting along.
Oof.
Yeah, his engineer's like, you're losing to... So what happened? Leclerc asks, how much time am I losing on the straights? His engineer comes back with a lot. No further information. Not giving him any updates on how bad the problem is. So Leclerc goes, I need to know how much exactly. I need to know what I need to be trying to make up and how much of a disadvantage I'm at. While racing. Like, he's wheel to wheel and having this argument with his engineer.
Uh, that, I don't know. I feel like that's not the right answer. I don't know. Yeah, totally. I feel basically what I'm trying to say is I feel like it's just common knowledge that when they say how much time am I losing, da 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 da, you kind of want to give them an accurate representation of how much time they're losing because they probably want that information for a reason.
Yeah, like, he wants to know so that he knows how much he has to defend. Or whether, like... Because if he sees Sainz in his rearview mirror, Sainz doesn't have an engine problem, then he knows Sainz is faster, so he's not going to fight him. Whereas if he sees a Haas in his rearview mirror, he's thinking, okay, I might be able to hold them off without compromising everything. Right?
Yeah, totally. And like, you don't want to get blue flagged, or you don't want to, like you said, like you want to take every opportunity to make sure that you're like, let's say you said you're losing a lot of time on the straight. Well, okay. Am I losing 2 seconds on this straight, or am I losing a quarter of a second on this straight? That's the difference between, like you said, defending a Ferrari or defending a Haas.
I believe it ended up being he was losing 2/10 every straight. Mind you, it's Canada. There's a few of them.
Yeah.
So he was losing, I believe, over a second a lap because of his engine problems. But
ouchies.
And the thing is, after he got mad at his engineer had that information right there and ready. He just didn't tell him. This weekend was a Ferrari masterclass, but from the Binotto era.
Okay, so that's that was what you were telling me when you said we had classic Ferrari stuff.
Yeah. Here's the thing. This is the best part of Leclerc's race.
It doesn't get better than that.
It only gets worse.
Oh. Keep talking.
Shortly after this, he'll end up being lapped.
Oh, he finished last?
He didn't finish.
Oh, he didn't finish.
So,
oh no.
What ends up happening is, find it on find the exact timing. I believe it was lap. I want to say it was lap 24. Potentially lap 25. But Logan Sargent loses it on a wet spot and crashes, causing a safety car. Now, here's the thing. On the radar, they knew that more rain would be coming sometime in the near future. So Ferrari has a masterstroke of an idea. They decide to pit for hards. And here's the thing. I do not know who was doing the F1 TV direction for this, but they need a raise and a promotion. Because, as Ferrari says, box for hards. This rain isn't going to be bad. It'll be over quickly. Camera, hard cut to Montreal, a monsoon that's going to blow in the next 2 minutes. The sky is black. It is a sheet of rain, and there is only the river blocking it. Literally, as they play the radio message. They cut from Leclerc getting hard strapped onto his car to that.
It's not going to be that bad.
So he's now a minute down on the leaders. Everyone else...
This race is only getting worse.
Yeah, no, No, he's not a minute down yet. He's like 45 seconds down.
Okay, so there's room to improve.
The rain's bad. Like, real bad. And again, Leclerc calls them out on this. So they box him again immediately for inters. So now he's a minute down.
Not full wets?
It wasn't actually that bad. It only lasted like a lap of rain.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. So, you know, Leclerc is now running around with... I think I'm getting my laps mixed up. But basically, Leclerc ends up running around in 19th, a minute down from Verstappen, gets lapped. Because by this point, because under that safety car, Max and Russell pit, like, immediately for new inters. For some reason, McLaren kept Lando out for a long time on his old inters.
Like, oh, really?
Yeah. The thing is, it was a tight gap at first. So he would have come out in second just behind Max, but on cold tires. I'm getting my order completely mixed up. This is later in the race. I had this all ready for yesterday, and then plans had to change. But no, basically what ends up happening is later on in the race, another safety car comes out. There were 4, I believe. And this is when they're able to pit for slicks. That's what it was. So what ends up happening is Max pits for slicks. A lap later, Russell pits for slicks. The thing is, you know, it's just rained. Parts of the track are still damp. It's taking a second for the slicks to warm up. So, at first, the worn inters versus cold slicks, the inters are faster for the first couple of laps. Mm-hmm. So, Lando's able to pull out more than a pit length advantage over Max by running 2 extra laps.
That's good.
Yeah. McLaren decides to run him for a third one. By that point, the slicks are faster. By a lot. So Max closes it to just under a pit length. And and then Norris pits for slicks. And they hit the timing line at the end of the pit lane at the exact same time. Problem is, Max has warmed up, fired up slicks on the dry line. Norris has cold slicks on a still wet part of the track. He almost spins. He manages to keep it under control. But yeah, he very nearly spins and loses it. And from there, the race kind of settles down, because at this point everyone's on slicks, but it's just the one dry line. No one gave that message to George Russell, who at this point has fallen behind Piastri, because Piastri pit when Max did. So Piastri had the lap advantage on his slick tires. George pitted a lap later. And Piastri was able to make up that distance. The thing is, George gets going into the hairpin. Not the hairpin, the chicane. About a quarter of a car length ahead of him. And then turns to the apex and hits him. Just
classic George.
Yeah, no, like literally, it's the same thing he did to Sainz at Coda a couple years ago. Just straight up turns into the side of him like he's not there. And somehow that the steward said that neither car was predominantly at fault, and it's just like, George sent it from a mile back, was basically equal, like wheel to wheel with him, and just crashed into his side. There was nothing that Piastri could have done there, aside from just not exist.
From trying not to die, basically.
Yeah, like the thing is, Piastri actually kind of cut the corner already because he saw George turning in on him. Like, he had to just vanish if he wanted to not get hit.
Because Curious George was hard charging.
Yeah, so I don't know how that ended up not being a penalty. I guess that at this point they just assume that of George. That does remind me. There was one other thing I missed.
What?
It happened at the start, and it kind of flew under the radar. But, yeah, Danny Rick got a penalty for an early start.
Rats.
Yeah, it was even more annoying, because it was less of a jump start than Norris or Perez had already had earlier in this season that they didn't get penalized for.
British bias.
What it was is everybody got rightly outraged at those two because they were very egregious jump starts. Like, they were massive and obvious, and those two didn't get penalized for them for some reason. So then the stewards are like, oh, well, I guess we should probably actually enforce that rule properly in the middle of the season. Danny Rick, like, rolled forward.
Well, that's when any good rule is enforced.
But yeah, that's the thing, is, like, Danny Rick rolls forward, like, an inch before the light goes green. And they're like, 5-second penalty. Meanwhile, Norris was like half a car length out of his box, and they're like, he touched the brakes, it's fine.
He made an attempt not to be bad.
Yeah. Ends up not being that big of a deal. Danny Rick still manages to finish fourth. Not fourth. He got 4 points. He finished 8th. So. But, yeah. So Leclerc ends up having to retire because his engine was exploding. He was a lap down. What are they going to do? Perez loses it, crashes into a wall, backwards, completely obliterates his rear wing, and then drives back to the pit with his rear wing hanging off the car. So he has a starting grid penalty next race, and Red Bull had to pay a $25,000 fine because instructed him to drive back to the pit with his car in unsafe condition.
Oh well.
Yeah, and the thing is, Red Bull straight up said when asked that, like, the reason they did it is because they knew that another pit cycle from a safety car meant that it wasn't likely for them to win. Which is why they got such a steep fine. Because the thing is, honestly, the McLaren was probably the fastest car of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just pure pace-wise, they were good on their tires, they had pace, they had grip. If it hadn't been for that safety car, or if the track had, the other lines on the track had dried faster, Norris wins this race. The reason he wasn't able to take it is because since there was only one dry line, it made it easy for Max to defend.
That's pretty unfortunate. Red Bull, Rebels and making the best decisions at the best times.
Yeah, that's the thing, is, like, I feel like the last couple of years of Red Bull dominance made people forget that, like, it's not just their engineering that's good. It's their decision-making.
Yeah, like, I mean, Max loses 3 times and all of a sudden, like, they're not good anymore.
Yeah, it's like, people forget that Red Bull was able to consistently take the fight to a Mercedes with by far the most dominant engine on the track while running the worst engine on the track. You don't just do that off of luck.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
But, and we're, you know, now that everything's closing up, we're finally getting to see that again. We might actually have a title race on the line. I still think Max is going to take the, you know, driver championship clear by a mile, but, you know, he's only...
A fight for second, if you will.
Yeah, well, at the end of the race, Checo ends up in 5th, in the driver standings. But, later on in the race, another incident happens. This one being with Carlos Sainz. He spins a bit. And, kinda... forgets to hold the brake after he spun. So he ends up backing onto the track. Right in front of Albon.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Unsurprisingly, neither of them finished the race. But yeah.
Impressive.
At the end of the day, it ends up being a really good race. The final standings end up being Max takes the win, followed by Norris, then Russell. Lewis is in 4th, and he also got the fastest lap. Piastri rounds out the top 5, followed up by Alonso, Stroll, Danny Rick, Gasly, Ocon, which there's a bit of a controversy there. Basically, at the end, team orders come into play, causing Ocon and Gasly to switch places on the, I believe it was the second to last lap.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, so, I mean, Ocon's kind of burned all of his bridges at the team. I forget what the exact reason
Did he have any?
But, yeah.
Comes over the radio. Hey, since you're, like, not going to be here at the end of the season, can you just give Gasly his points so we don't have a reason to fire him?
I mean, basically.
Mm.
Like, there was somewhat of a reason behind it, but it was more or less, you know. Because, like,
yeah,
I do somewhat understand what they did. Partly because Alpine has this weird thing where basically, like, if you go back and look, they've done this for years. If on strategy their drivers end up next to each other at the end of the race, but one of them qualified a lot better than the other, they'll often switch it so that the one who qualified better ends up in the lead.
Interesting.
If you look back on it, they usually only do it when the reason that one that they ended up so close together is because the person who was farther back ended up with the better strategy. But yeah, they do it fairly regularly. They try to come up with like excuses as to why they do it, but generally speaking, that's kind of the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Because Ocon started 18th. Well, he qualified 18th. He actually started, I believe, 17th because, yeah, Bottas was in front of him, went to the pit lane. But yeah. So, like, Ocon drove a good race. Well, okay, half of the people in front of him, that half of his positions he made up were people who crashed. But, you know, ignoring that.
Hey, but, I mean, hey, he didn't crash, so it was still,
yeah,
a well-driven race.
Yeah, like, he had a good race. Honestly, I do think that they probably should have kept him in front, but I can see it either way. But yeah, so Gasly and Ocon round out the top 10. Then it's the Haas boys, Hülkenberg, Magnussen, Bottas, Yuki in 14th. He was kind of completely anonymous this race. Just nowhere. And then Zhou is the last of the finishers, and the only person to finish a lap down.
Very good.
Yeah, in all, this is the best race of the season. Like, by a mile.
I'm trying to think of a better one. I can't really disagree. Maybe Australia. Maybe is as good as.
The thing is, I liked Australia, but, like, you switch the Ferrari out for a Red Bull, and it's unremarkable.
I guess that's true. Nah. I know no. Monaco is by far the best. It's always the best Grand Prix.
You know what? I think Monaco could learn a thing or two from, because like there are good street races on the calendar, like Saudi Arabia. The missile strike really spiced things up. Monaco could learn something from that.
Oh no! Back to nuking. All right, best race of the season, but Jensen Button didn't win it this time.
Pretty much. Look, Canada, you get rain in Canada, you get a good race. Every now and then it means that they have to change a rule about how long the race can run for, sure, but it's good.
And before we go on, I do want to say about Canada, I feel like it's one of those tracks where people don't have a ton to complain about. I don't know, maybe I missed all of it, but in all my years of, I don't know, going on F1 websites and YouTube videos, I never really hear the complaints I hear about other tracks. Like, if we go to a new street course like Azerbaijan or Miami or Saudi Arabia, there's a lot of opinions. Or if you have even a track you've had for a long time, for instance, no other than Monaco, or even tracks like as simple as Bahrain or others like that. I feel like there's always a bit of flack. Of course, like, yeah, there's a little bit of hate. Like, why are they on the calendar? Do we really need this? Could it be replaced with something else? Could we like put Sepang in there instead? But I feel like with Canada, it's been on one of those tracks that has, it's been on the calendar for a good long while. Like, it's been there for a while, but it's never gotten a lot of hate where someone's calling for a new 2-mile racetrack to put in there. Like, I feel like Canada delivers everything you want in like a solid F1 race where the track itself had a good combination of tight turns, straights, and chicanes, which, interestingly enough, I don't think there's technically S's because there's turns 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are kind of like slower S's, but I feel like S's are kind of what's lacking there, which is why Sepang is the best track ever. We'll get to that one day, but yeah, I think Canada is always going to be a mainstay because it always is going to deliver one of the best races of all time every now and then accidentally, which is a good problem to have. But yeah, it's always going to provide a solid race, and I think that's why it's always never kind of been a center of drama like a lot of F1 tracks have been. Even Melbourne, of course, it's like the configuration and how tight the streets can be. It's always gotten a little bit of heat for that, but yeah, I don't think there's ever been a big complaint about Canada that at least I've seen.
I was gonna say, if when the weather condition is stable, if it's dry, it can be kind of a dull race. But usually, I think a big thing that helps Canada is because of just the way it's laid out, race pace and quali pace are very different around the track. So I think that, like, even whenever it's a dry race, they're more boring, but they're not terrible. So, and a lot of that, I think, comes down to the difference in quali versus race pace, tending to lead to mixed up quali sessions like what we had this time.
Yeah, but I personally like Canada, and we'll take more from them. And I mean, I haven't watched highlights yet, but I don't know. I'm not in my F1 phase yet. When I get there, I'll let you know. But it's whatever. Max Verstappen won. I feel like the times when Red Bull isn't winning is when I'm most invested. And to me, no matter how good the race was, it was just another Max Verstappen win, which is kind of how I'm gonna feel about when we get to NASCAR here in a minute or two. Is just kind of dull. I'm bored.
I mean, here's the thing. This is the closest anyone has looked to being able to fight Red Bull since 21.
That is true. But yeah, I'm enjoying that. But still, I mean, there's some races where even when the race begins, like I was watching the live scoring between Russell and Verstappen, I'm like, I just don't know.
Oh yeah, Russell didn't stand a chance.
I feel like by lap 10, I kind of knew Verstappen was going to win, and I lost interest after that.
Lap 10, that's when Norris was leading.
Eli, no.
All I'm saying is, it's looking more and more likely that McLaren might take at least second in the constructors and bring the fight to Red Bull. Because
I hope so.
McLaren as a team over the last 3 races has outscored Red Bull massively.
That is, yeah, no, I'm very excited about that. Like them and Ferrari definitely are exciting. I feel like I'm also a bit bummed going into the season because Aston Martin very much is going the other way, which is bothering me as an Aston Martin fan.
I mean, they need to can Stroll. We'll get to that in the news too.
Yeah,
there was a fun interview.
Yeah, he's holding them back. At least Alonso scored points.
Yeah, they both did, didn't they? Yeah, they both did.
Oh,
6th and 7th.
They still need a can Stroll though.
Yeah, they
still need a can Stroll. Yeah, but I don't know. At this point, I feel like I'll keep looking it up, but when it comes to actually my excitement level for as far as the European stretch of the season goes on, I mean, the European stretch is usually when the most dominant team or the best team overall is going to flex their muscles. Like, I feel like the early and latter parts of the season is when other tracks are involved that other teams may have a chance at, where the European stretch is very much like we're going to this size track. It's very similar. Like, here, let's pull up the schedule because I feel like the European stretch is always when Max Verstappen begins to pull away by 200 points, but like we're going to Spain, then Austria, then Great Britain, Hungary, Belgium, Netherlands, and it doesn't get different from those tracks until we get to Italy.
Here's the problem. The years you're talking about, he was pulling away from Checo. When the early part of the calendar was a lot of tracks that Checo was good at.
That's true, but also I can't say
good at a lot of these tracks that are coming up.
That's true, but also I'm feeling pessimistic because I feel like Max still has the best pace through the field.
There's a decent chance that... Actually, you know what? I'm going to say it now. I think McLaren's going to take a 1-2 at Austria.
And you know what? I would agree that that's a possibility. But Max is probably going to win the other 5. I mean, we have Great Britain, Hungary. Like the stretch from Hungary, Belgium, and Netherlands. How is Max not going to win those 3? If everything stays the same, how is he not going to win 3 in a row at those places?
Yeah, but Great Britain would probably be good for McLaren and Ferrari.
Oh yeah, Sainz did win that a couple years ago.
Sainz won it. No. Norris was in the fight for it last year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the cars had the biggest disparity between them.
You know what? And listeners, I'm sorry if I'm sounding pessimistic, but really what I need to see that 1-2 at Austria. If in the next 6 tracks, if McLaren can at least win one of them and look convincing at another, I'll be interested again. But right now, I'm just very pessimistic. Like we are going into Max's meat and potatoes. Like
I think Spain is 100% a Max domination.
That's what. Yeah, like it also could be affected. Like guys, like when you have that one really big week of work coming up, and Sunday you just feel terrible. Right now, Spain is Monday, and this discussion is Sunday. Like I cannot get hyped for F1 for whatever reason. Like I have no F1 modes on my body to talk about right now, and I think that's because we're going to Spain, and I'm looking at that, and I'm like, first of all, Mercedes is going to do something dumb, probably. Second of all, Max is probably not going to do something dumb and win by at least 26 seconds.
I can guarantee Mercedes is going to do something dumb because Toto was brave enough to say that he's pretty sure that this weekend they were able to figure out their car.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That I feel like, and college football fans out there, the curse statement, "We want Bama." Like I think Toto just said, "We want Bama," and he's gonna get Bama in Spain.
Toto also said, "It seems like our upgrades were working more than the Red Bull downgrades." He said that after qualifying.
I don't know, man. I'm glad. I love that Toto is a hyped team principal, and when his guy gets one pole, he's going to celebrate the heck out of it. I love that. But as the outside looking in, it's like, yup.
He isn't showing himself as being the most competent team leader for the past few years.
Yeah. So, but listeners, going into Spain, I really wish I could. I wish I could look all of you honestly in the eye and say Max Verstappen is not going to win Spain, and he is going to get a massive fight for McLaren and Ferrari. Which I agree with Eli. Austria and Great Britain are interesting races to keep an eye on, but I just don't see how Max isn't going to win Spain unless his engine fails, which that's what I'm hoping for.
I'm trying to figure. Here's the good news. Same week as Spain. IndyCar is at Laguna Seca, so we'll have a good race to talk about.
That's true. Okay, I love Laguna Seca. All right, you know what, listeners? I'm 50% happier after Eli said that. At least if Verstappen wins by 26 seconds, we will have a good race.
So anyway, Sonoma.
Anyway, yeah, we've talked enough about this.
We reached our half hour or so.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was a lot longer, but and in summary, good race. We'll take more Canadas, but also Max is going to win next weekend.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Anyway, so going on to Sonoma now, it's my turn to talk to myself. So I
actually watched the highlights for this, so I have vague thoughts. To be fair, I have the specific thoughts.
You're a much better co-host than me. I will say that. Yeah, you know what, Eli? You're the Max Verstappen of being a co-host. You're totally going to win Spain next weekend. So brief.
Weekend, is it? Oh yeah,
it feels like it may as well be next weekend because I want it over with. But brief summary of Sonoma. I was kind of, what's the word? rats. I'll just say shocked that the first 37 laps had that many cautions. And I guess I shouldn't have been, because before the race, I forgot that Sonoma got repaved, and they were talking about how basically the drivers will be having to pull off almost qualifying laps every lap to just stay in contention, because there really isn't going to be tire fall off. It's just going to be wear. So,
the thing I noticed they mentioned was they also replaced some of the tire barriers so they used to be able to lick with concrete.
Oh yeah, no, and that concrete, I will say, before we get into too much caution discussion, that concrete totally caused at least 2 of those cautions of the 5. And I'm going to say the worst decision of the weekend between F1, IndyCar, and NASCAR was, if you know what I mean by Sonoma Turn 11. And for listeners who don't know Sonoma, I'm going to mansplain it really quick. When you look at it, Google a picture of Sonoma. It's the tightest part of the racetrack. It's that kind of really narrow U-turn at the end of the racetrack. That's turn 11. There used to be tire barriers there, which, like Eli said, drivers could kind of touch, and if they touched it, they wouldn't die. But they decided to make that a concrete, and not just a concrete wall, separate concrete pieces. So now it is a jagged concrete wall that cut 2 tires. So I guess you could also say the drivers just need to get used to it, need to get better. And the drivers did get used to it, because after those 7 cautions, the only other caution in that race was at the end of stage 2. So it went from utter chaos to really good racing. And but yeah, that was it. So the first 37 laps yielded 7 cautions. So it was a caution-heavy first part of the race with, let me try to remember who was really good. The Penske cars, I believe, yeah, Joey Logano was on pole. Tyler Reddick was pretty dominant the first part of the race, but once you start getting into some pit stop cycles and everything, I thought I was good at what I do, and now I'm gonna have to go back to the app, because all I remember was Tyler Reddick was good in the beginning, and MTJ, Chris Buescher, and Kyle Larson were good at the end. I kind of forget who is the meat and potatoes guy in the middle. It wasn't too interesting, because I like Sonoma, but Sonoma, I'm going to say, I feel like I watched this movie before, and that's what I'm going to talk about, because I can't remember who was stage 2 results. Who was the best? Oh, it was Chris Buescher and Martin Truex still. Okay, never mind. So I guess that's why I remember. So yeah, Tyler Reddick was the dominant car at the beginning of the first stage. By stage 2 in, Chris Buescher and Martin Truex had kind of separated themselves. But yeah, as the race went on, we kind of saw a strategy that we've seen before at Sonoma. And when I was watching the end of this, Eli, like the final pit cycle, the final 40 laps, Chris Buescher, Martin Truex, and hey, by the way, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
I was going to say, something happened to my microphone. I wanted to make sure. So Chris Buescher, Martin Truex Jr., and a lot of others in the field decided to stretch the last portion of the race. So stage 3, they decided to, I believe it was split it in half. They were going to split it down the middle. On the other hand, you had Kyle Larson, who Cliff Daniels decided, hey, let's stretch this tire run as long as possible. That will give us 2 advantages. First of all, this is a brand new race surface, so there's still going to be plenty of grip to make lap time on. And Kyle Larson was making that time. He was conserving his tires very well. And he had clean air, so he was making much better time than Chris Buescher and Martin Truex, who were getting stuck in lap traffic. So Kyle Larson was able to match their lap times, even though they had fresh tires. So they couldn't take advantage of their fresh tires. So Kyle Larson stretched out that run until I believe it was the final 20 laps or 25 laps. And that's when he pitted. And then that way at the end of the race, with about 10 laps to go, his fresh tires were very much fresher than Martin Truex and Chris Buescher. And he came out of the pits like 6 seconds behind them, because once again, they got caught in lap traffic, and he didn't. And he was finally able to catch both of them. Chris Buescher hiccuped, and then Martin Truex hiccuped, and Mr. Fresh Tires went on to win. And after this race, not even after, watching this happen, I'm like, this is a traumatic memory for me. This is literally just 2018. yes, listeners, I have already talked an extent of how much I love 2018, but it's also traumatic when probably the race I liked the least in 2018 just repeated itself. And I got the same feeling because Kyle Larson on a week in, week out basis is the last guy I kind of want to see win between him and William Byron because I'm a Ford guy. But in 2018, that's exactly what happened. Now, it was a different circumstance where it was Kevin Harvick and Martin Truex battling for the lead. And the way Martin Truex got Kevin Harvick to pit earlier than him was to psych him out. What happened was Martin Truex Jr. went on the radio to Cole Pearn, his crew chief, and actually, it was the other way around. Cole Pearn told Martin Truex, like, come in this lap, come in this lap. And Kevin Harvick was following Truex and obviously had the better car and decided to pit because he wants to try to catch Truex. He wants to have the same tires. And Kevin Harvick's pit crew was a bit better that year, so they probably could have gotten the advantage. But yeah, Kevin Harvick was conned into coming in earlier. So once again, he got caught up in traffic. He used up his tires quicker. Martin Truex pitted later, took advantage of that ruse, and had fresh tires and slowly caught up to Kevin Harvick, passed him, got the win. This is exactly what happened, except, Cliff Daniels didn't ruse Chris Buescher and Martin Truex into pitting earlier, which is kind of ironic that Truex finally gets karma 6 years after doing that to my favorite driver. By the way, listeners, that's why it's traumatic. It was because he did it to Kevin Harvick, but anyway. But yeah, so it literally just happened again, and once again, I'm leaving disappointed because I really wanted to see Chris Buescher win, and he didn't. But yeah, so my kind of take on the Sonoma race, so that's kind of what happened. Kyle Larson definitely had the speed to win, but I feel like Chris Buescher, Tyler Reddick, or Truex definitely had the speed to win. It's kind of nice to see all three manufacturers kind of have a guy be able to win, but it was a good race. It was a very chaotic first part of the race, and honestly, the first part of the race, I'm like, this may be one of the worst races in NASCAR history if it keeps going like this, but it didn't. So it was just a good overall race. It was solid. But yeah, like, it was, and I'm not going to pretend like I hate it, because coming from an outside perspective, just as NASCAR the sport, seeing a race like this that highlights tire strategy is so cool. Like, this is what people want to see. They want to see a differing strategy. They want to see tires matter to a point where a guy like Kyle Larson can just be different and win because he was different. And I think that was a cool way to win a race, is just you had the best strategy of the day and you got the deserving win because you did. I very, very much was pulling for Chris Buescher, but at the same time, Kyle Larson was closing in lap after lap, and it's like, it's not going to last, is it? And it didn't. And I'm like, yep, that was just 2018 happening again in Sonoma. So I think that's kind of pretty brief. It was a good race. I didn't enjoy the winner, but once again, it's like it never gets old to see people never really learn their lessons. It does it. Like, yes, that was the Generation 6 car, and they probably threw out all those notes. But at the same time, race strategy is race strategy. It's so weird to see how, like, even the best race car drivers in the world, history can repeat itself as soon as 6 years. Like, that was cool to me.
Yeah.
To just see it happen again. So it doesn't matter if I wasn't happy with the result. It was a good race. It was cool to see that the race went green long enough to see all these different strategies work out, which is kind of why you tune into a race, is to see these guys who are the best at what they do just do their own thing and see which one does it the best. And definitely the 5 team did the best this week. So that's my take. Good race. Soma isn't the best NASCAR track, but it is definitely not the worst. It's once again, just if I could give a race 4 stars, Sonoma would be it. It's a good race. I'll watch it every weekend.
Yeah. To be fair, the Cup Series race wasn't really why we're talking about NASCAR this weekend.
Oh yeah, no, the race was definitely good, and I was gonna mention 2018 whether Eli liked it or not, but there may be 2 other things in NASCAR that maybe are a bit cooler or more interesting. Well, one of them's cooler. One of them, actually, I know Eli was going to mention he was going to go on a rant, Eli, after you're done, I'm going to go on a rant because I have stuff to say. But before I say that, I also want to say that, dang it, what was I going to say? Oh,
clones.
Oh, wait, is that him? Is that
yes?
Is that Bobby Roberts?
Oh,
It's Bobby Roberts.
Hold on, I need to check and see if he's actually coming through on the stream.
Listeners, I will quickly finish up what I was going to say about NASCAR and go on to. Do we go on to Eli 5 or do we talk about SVG and Martin Truex?
We can talk about SVG for a little bit and then just save Truex for the news section.
Okay, Bobby, if you can hear me, just you're gonna have to wait. Guys, we're gonna introduce Bobby in a second, but just know that Bobby Roberts is probably this podcast's best friend. Technically, he was the first special guest star. And by the way, go back and listen to that episode, which you can't, but he was the first guest star we ever had.
I'll probably upload it at some point unedited. It'll just be terrible.
Yeah, no, that's gonna be the best 3 hours of my life. But yeah, really.
Eli threatened to over-explain something, so I figured I'd hop on and see what I could do about that.
Now, what's funny about that is you hopped on just to find me over-explaining something. This is so good. All right, so yeah, I'm going to be done with my Sonoma discussion, and just talk about SVG really quick. But yeah, Eli's right. We're going to talk about NASCAR, not because the race was good, which once again it was, but there is someone who is really, really good at racing cars, specifically stock cars. What do you think, Eli? Is he ready for a cup ride?
Frankly, I think that he should have had one for the road courses anyway.
You're right. Yeah, no, and I was watching Eric Estep's video, and all of us are kind of in agreement, like, why isn't he cup racing anyway, and on at least road courses? Like, when you are just beating the tar out of these kids every weekend, and you're this 35-year-old Chad from Australia,
Pole, like 32 laps led of an 80-lap race.
Yeah, no. So, but yeah, so guys, basically what we're trying to say is SVG won for the second weekend in a row. As a Xfinity Series rookie, he is very much a threat for the championship at this point, as long as the title race is at a road course. But yeah, this is amazing.
Yeah, I get, he's not used to ovals, so I get putting him in Xfinity for the ovals and the super speedways. But how the Trackhouse car isn't doing anything. Not the track, but the oh god, what's the special one? The one that he won in at Chicago.
Project 91.
Yeah, that. It's not. They have a charter that they're not doing anything with.
I didn't think about that. They literally own that charter with the 91 car. They could literally just put him in whenever they wanted.
Yeah, they could throw him into every road course.
And he probably would have won half of them by now.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we've only ran 2 or 3 road courses. Actually, yeah, we've run Sonoma, Coda, and that's it.
Yeah, just.
But he probably would have. He could have won one or the other, right? Obviously.
I mean, we've not seen him run at Coda, but considering what he did this week, again, 32 laps, and the laps he didn't lead was largely because of strategy. It wasn't because he was overtaken. In fact,
yeah,
I saw someone, I don't think I have it saved, but someone tweeted, I don't think he was ever overtaken on track. I think it was all just pit stops.
Yeah, just he's so good. And I know what we're doing to SVG is kind of what Eli complained about what IndyCar was doing to Kyle Larson. But the difference is SVG earned this.
He's winning. If Larson showed up and took pole, I would have been biggest fan ever. But he didn't. SVG did.
And that's the difference is SVG won twice and he also can kick a ball 75 yards.
This honestly, at this point, this kind of feels like if you were to put Max Verstappen in F2.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, why isn't he in F1?
It just kind of feels unfair at this point.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at the Xfinity schedule really quick because I want to see how many road courses we won, because yeah, SVG has won at the last 2 road courses.
I think they've only run 3, and I think he's won 2 of them, and I think he took second at the other one. If I'm remembering right.
Oh my gosh, yeah, because the winner of Coda and Xfinity was Kyle Larson, and oh no, I do not see him anywhere. And SVG was 27th, which has to be an accident, of course. Like, so he's won the 2 that he has been able to win. And coming up, we have the Chicago Street Race in Xfinity, which I don't know if he's doing Cup, but yeah, we have Chicago, and then we have Watkins Glen, and then we have the Charlotte Motor Speedway Road Course. Like, he has 3 more opportunities in Xfinity, and like, I really, really kind of want to watch those.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, he's gonna win again. Oh wait, but then looking at the point, like the how the playoff format works, SVG could literally get to the round of 8 as long as he wins every road course.
SVG got a 30-second penalty at Coda on the last lap.
And
that's why he finished where he did. He led the race. He won on track.
Gotta be. Oh my gosh. Oh wait, he won on track?
I believe no. Okay. On the last lap, he gets into an incident with Austin Hill, and that's what gets him the penalty. That's where Larson overtakes him.
So if there wasn't American bias, he would have won all 3.
And it was on lap 15, which is like, I think, the second or third to last corner. If I'm remembering right.
Yeah, no, this is...
Basically, like, he's been pretty dominant.
Yeah. 2 of the 3. The only reason he didn't get a top 10, the other one was because of that incident. So I'm going to say he's going to win at least 2 more road courses. If we're going to 3, I don't see how he doesn't win the other 2. Yeah. At least 2 of the next 3. So, but no, I mean, I would love to see SVG make it to the round of 8 purely on road course wins.
I mean, to be fair, because like at this point, he's got the bride for the playoffs, right?
Yeah, I mean, so
because it's
as long as you win, you're in the NASCAR playoffs usually.
Yeah, and he's won 2, so that puts him at an even better advantage.
Yeah, and like Eli said, the more you win, the higher you're going to be. So at this point, I think SVG is definitely he has to be a playoff lock. Like, yeah, of the cars that can win, I doubt that there's going to be 17 winners before the playoffs. So no, SVG is totally a lock. He's going to be there.
Who's
SVG? Oh, save that for the segment.
I honestly don't think that's a question you want to ask, because I don't think it's very, very long, and you would not.
Is it more than just a name?
Yes.
This is a.
We would have to explain like 3 other racing series to you for it to make sense.
No. And actually, Isaac, wait. No. I mean, Bobby, before you give us that question, I actually want you to save that for Eli 5, because the point of Eli 5 is to challenge our bot named Eli, so he can explain it in 5 minutes or less. But if Eli can't explain who SVG is in 5 minutes or less, I think that's like a valid possibility. It might take him longer than 5 minutes to explain SVG.
I just checked. SVG is one of the only drivers to have won 2 races this year. The only three drivers in Xfinity have won 2 races, and it's Austin Hill, Chandler Smith, and SVG.
I think that's all we need to say. I mean, and that's also tied for the most wins, right?
Yeah. They are all at 2.
That's incredible. Coming up is Iowa and New Hampshire, so those are ovals that require braking, so we might see some good SVG results.
I mean, the thing is, he hasn't been terrible at ovals. He's just not been, like, he's just been in the fight.
Yeah.
Not running away with it.
I really do hope that SVG, like, gets good enough at ovals to really be in the mix. Like, by season's end, I hope he's good enough that, like, when we go to Phoenix, he will be in the fight hardcore.
Shane Van Gisbergen?
Yes. That's why we call him SVG.
Do you want to go into Eli 5 now? Have we talked enough about SVG?
Yeah, well, obviously not enough, because
there may be a burden to be around in the room who needs to know who SVG is.
Yeah.
Okay, actually, I'm the host. Eli, it doesn't matter your opinion. I think we're done talking about SVG, frankly, and it's time to explain to the common man who SVG Shane Van Gisbergen is. So, welcome to the Eli 5 segment. Now, before we get into Eli 5... Hey,
Hi, everybody, it's Eli 5. Eli asks, Eli answers, Eli 5. Yeah.
I want to point out, you just peaked so much that Discord tried to mute you, Isaac.
Not enough about my voyeurism problem.
All right. So, Bobby Roberts did an excellent job of introducing the segment, so I'm going to introduce Bobby. So, Bobby Roberts, longtime friend of the show. He was our first ever guest. Quick notes on Bobby. No, definitely. No, we want to have you on more if you can. But no, I think we want to have Bobby on more because he also goes by the alias Prime Jimmy Johnson. He is a 5-time disc golf world champion, and he is probably the hero of the Midwest as soon as he steps on that tee pad. So that's our guest this week. Hey, Bobby, how you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me. Well,
our pleasure. Thanks for coming back on. I knew you kind of felt like we were maybe ignoring you for a bit because you were on once and then we never talked to you again. We texted you again, but
to be fair, we didn't talk to each other for that 3 months either.
Oh, have you made it up?
Yeah. No, we're good. I only hate Eli 10% less.
We're fueled by rage. You'll see that later, too.
Yeah, there's basically 3 Sith Lords in this room. Alrighty, so to get this Eli 5 segment off, if you're a new listener, the point of the Eli 5 segment, maybe like Bobby Roberts saying, is Eli, the grand saint of this show, the grand captain, he needs to mansplain to a random victim guest. This week it's Bobby, a motorsports question in 5 minutes or less. So what's going to happen is I'm going to say, Bobby, ask us your question, and then Eli has to answer in 5 minutes or less. And if he cannot mansplain that question in 5 minutes or less, he gets kicked off the show and replaced with a more competent host. Alrighty. Stakes are high, Eli. Alright,
good luck with finding someone else who will actually run the stream.
Guys, let me asterisk. If Eli can't answer this in 5 minutes or less,
I would also like to know I'm the one with all of the passwords for all of the accounts, except for the Instagram.
You know, if you're going to mansplain, let's just start right now. All right, Bobby. You have 5 minutes on, or Eli, you got 5 minutes on the clock. Go ahead, Bobby. Ask us your question.
Keep in mind, this counts toward the 5 minutes. So, dear listener, I am going to take it upon myself before the Eli 5.
It does not.
A new segment called Abby Says What? Dear listener, I would like to take you back to October 24th, 2009. Ohio State was playing Minnesota on the football field. At this time, ESPN/ABC had the contract for NASCAR,
God.
and during the games, they would advertise the next race coming up. At this point, I forget who the play-by-play guy was, but I remember the 2 color commentators were Bob Creasy and former Ohio State great Chris Spielman. Now, if you were listening to 97.1 The Fan at the time, you know that Chris Spielman had a small fascination with the racer Juan Pablo. He would do for the little graphics would be to show you like the top 5 of the point standings at that moment. So on October 24th, 2009, there were 5 racers in the lead for the point standings. One of those racers was not Juan Pablo Montoya. So, being the Juan Pablo Montoya fan Chris Spielman was, he asked, rhetorically, "Where's Juan Pablo Montoya?" To which Bob Greasy answered, "He's out having a taco." At the conclusion of this game, as the clock was winding down, Ohio State was about to win 38-7. They were taking their knees, and all of a sudden, there was a loud silence coming from the announcer's booth. About 15 to 20 seconds after this silence, Bob Greasy, you can hear the trembling in his voice, starts to apologize to Juan Pablo Montoya and his family for making the said taco comment. Now, Eli, who's SVG?
So, okay, SVG. He's from New Zealand. His full name is Shane Van Gisbergen. And he's kind of a big deal. Basically, he's done a lot of racing in New Zealand racing series. Starting with karts, as every racer does. But what he got known for is the Australian V8 Supercar Championship. And basically, what that is they're fairly similar to stock cars. They've got bigger wings. They're a bit different. Have some more gears. But similar sort of vibes. When he raced there, he won 3 separate championships. And had close to 100 wins in his career in V8 supercar racing. He is one of the most dominant drivers in that series history. Now, Trackhouse Racing has a special car. They're a NASCAR team. Well, they're more than a NASCAR team now. But they have a special charter that is specifically for them bringing in drivers from other series to be able to do one-off races. Last year, for the inaugural Chicago street race, the first ever street race in NASCAR history, they decided to go ahead and bring in SVG. And he won. His first time ever driving a NASCAR Cup Series stock car. It's kind of a big deal. How many years had it been since that happened, Levi?
Never.
Okay, well, not technically never, because the first ever Cup Series race, but...
Oh, let me say, 1948 Red Byron.
There you go. Been, a long time. But, so, he shows up, he does that. And he's kind of getting tired of racing the V8 supercars. So, he decides he's going to come to the United States and keep racing in NASCAR. So now he's racing in their junior series, the Xfinity series, and he's been doing decent on the ovals. And then they get to road courses. The ones where you turn left and right. And he is absolutely destroying the field in those races. So basically, he's a Kiwi motorsport legend that has decided to come to America and show that he knows what he's doing. I believe you.
What's the time on that?
4 minute 57 seconds. .43. Eli,
Dear Lord Almighty,
you're on the podcast.
I tried to hamstring him, but you know what? Eli has 2 hamstrings.
It's about to say. But listeners, I'm going to do a Brian Greasy-like apology, so I'm going to need 20 seconds silence.
And Greasy is his son!
I want to say that, according to NASCAR.com, there has been more than just Red Byron and SVG to win their first NASCAR race in the Cup Series. So, I also want to say, I think SVG is the first person in NASCAR history, other than Red Byron, to just simply win their first start in NASCAR. Because I think I may have to fact check that, but all other 11 guys on this list had raced in the Xfinity or Truck Series before. So, I think SVG might actually be the first one to just straight up win his first ever NASCAR sanctioned race. Anyway, we're mansplaining SVG. Isaac, were you mansplained well today, and would you leave a tip?
Well, my tip would be to let me on again and give you more stories of racist color commentators talking about NASCAR. And I think I understand. So Shane Van Gisbergen is really good at one particular type of racing, and he came to America and he's dominating at that particular type of racing.
Basically a different version of it, yeah.
Fantastic. I think my 5 has been Eli.
There you go.
You know what? We have a 100% sex rate.
Excuse me?
the libido on the show is oozing from the mic. But we have a 100% success rate at properly fiving our Eli 5. Or Eliing our 5s, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, that was Eli 5. That was Eli 5. He asked you, answered Eli 5. He took a question and you gave an answer. Eli 5, Eli 5. What's that? That's an answer. What's that? NASCAR F1? I don't know. You're going to have to ask Eli.
Oh.
I'm terrified of what you're going to ask about the 24 hours of Le Mans.
No. He took his 5 minutes. It's okay.
I was talking about next week.
Oh, speaking of 24 hours, what was the deal on the Gran Turismo games with like the 24-hour races?
Save that question for next week.
What really happened?
Yeah, no, you're not allowed. I'm sorry. I don't want to disrespect a 5-time world champion, but we have to kind of stretch out those questions. Our show is painfully uninteresting, and if we decide to just drop all of our balls in one episode, then we don't have any balls for the next week.
I neglected to take into account the drip feed of content that Day Society dictates. My bad. Ignore my question. I come back next week where I might ask a similar question or the same one.
It's not even like you listen to your own podcast and realize you like a slow drip of information leading up to a movie.
And dear listener, if you haven't learned about Levi yet, he loves the most insular of references. References that sometimes the subject of the references themselves can comprehend.
Grandma racing. Anyway.
Just too bad my podcast that one of the co-hosts died.
Oh no. No, we have to move on now. You
wanted to be the host this week. It's your job to get this under control.
I'm so used to having people do things for me. Like, I still live at my mom's house, so I'm just waiting for Eli to take over. I'm just waiting for Eli to take over.
You know what? I can just wait because I'm pretty distracting to keep around.
Yeah. No, it's a good kind of distracting, we promise. But I'm
about to rant for 20 minutes, so...
Yeah, you want to leave, Jimmy. So, Bobby, thank you so much for stopping by. Your question was properly Eli 5'd, and we wish you the best on your next disc golf tournament, which you're probably going to win.
He says goodbye.
Alrighty. That was the best kind of mess. But it's so funny. I need to get used to being a host because I'm just leaving air in waiting for Eli to take over, so I have to be the one to take control. It's okay, guys. We'll learn to take control together. So
I mean, I picked it up occasionally, but I didn't want to mop today, so I figured I'd let you finish that one off.
It's good. Eli is very assertive, and I am very unassertive, and that leads to me being a very unassertive host. Anyway, so I think we properly mansplained all about NASCAR and F1 this weekend. We had our guest on, and he's satisfied. So now we just kind of have to go into the last part of this episode, much to the listeners' relief, and that is the news part. So I have something to rant about, and I kind of want to do that, but I can't because I was the last one to have my own talking segment. So Eli gets to rant for 20 minutes. So on to the news. Eli, kick us off.
All right. I technically have 2 things to rant about. Should I start with the less incendiary one?
I want you to knock my socks off right away.
All right, so let's talk about the super license.
Oh gosh. Yeah, no, do it. Definitely do it.
Yeah, so today it was announced that the FIA has decided to change how super licenses are granted. They removed the requirement for you to have a normal driver's license, and also added the thing saying that if they give you special consideration, they'll let some drivers drive at 17. Mind you, the entire reason that the super license point system exists was to keep drivers without a driver's license who were under 18 from driving. But, let's just ignore that for a second. They did this specifically because they wanted to let Kimi Antonelli do test sessions. Which, okay, fine. I don't like the super license system. In fact, I hate it. I want it to die. Completely. But, here's the thing. A couple of years ago, another driver from another series, who, mind you, it's a higher level series than Antonelli has ever raced in, also wanted to get a super license. But, also, because of oversights in the super license system, didn't have the points. They denied him. That driver's name is Colton Herta. Pretty good IndyCar driver. But they completely shut him down because he didn't have enough super license points. The reason? Because IndyCar is rated at the same level of super license points as the lowest open wheel racing series in Europe. This is a top level open wheel series, but it has one of the lowest super license points of any series that there is. Herta is a 7-time race winner in a racing series where the fields are substantially tighter than F1, where you are racing wheel to wheel for laps on end. But he wasn't granted special dispensation to be able to get a super license. But Toto Wolff has his driver that he wants in. Suddenly, the FIA changes the rules. The rules that were put in place because Toto complained about Max Verstappen being allowed to race when he was 17. And it's entirely because he wants Antonelli to race for him next year. So he's pressuring Williams. Mind you, that's a fun little trick that he did. Instead of, him saying it himself, he put pressure on James Vowles to run Antonelli as their young driver this year. So that means that Williams needs the special dispensation, needs him to get a super license so that they can run him for the first half of the season. And then Mercedes can be like, oh no, we just, because Williams wanted him to have it, then that means he has it now. So we can go ahead and run him for ours too, be fine. Toto Wolff does not know what he is doing. He managed to lose Lewis Hamilton, one of the most loyal drivers in the series, in the history of F1. Managed to lose him out of incompetence. His team is falling apart around him. And now he has pressured the FIA to change a rule that he had instated. All of this, while, mind you, the team that he owns a third of the ownership in has an open seat, and a driver who he is the manager of does not have a seat for next year. Toto Wolff got lucky with where Mercedes was when he got into the sport. And I do not think Mercedes is going to be able to grow under him. And also, the super license system needs to be destroyed. That is the end of that rant.
It's perfect.
Man, I love FE, but Formula E should not give you more points than IndyCar. I guess the rant isn't over.
No, and you know what, Eli? You're absolutely right. I was just going to let you talk, which I'm glad I did. You're welcome. But I wanted to say, I do think the level of European bias is annoying as an American, and this isn't a nationalistic discussion. This is a racing discussion. How in the world IndyCar is faster than Formula One? I get it. F1 is technically faster, but when you're a race car driver no Formula One driver in history, besides that one random dude who drove for Toyota in that one wingless test, has topped 240 miles an hour in a race car and has successfully done it. How many turns are in the Indy 500? 800? Indy car drivers are some of the best in the world. And if you think your Formula E driver is better than an IndyCar driver, I can't be the judge of talent, but he's probably not. He's probably not as good as an IndyCar driver. IndyCar drivers are also more fit than your European racing series, usually. There's no power steering in the cars, and an IndyCar is definitely weighs more than your average lower echelon open wheeler in Europe. But yeah, that's the thing. It's like I'm with you, Eli. It's ridiculous that first of all the super license thing. Yeah, it's way too malleable. It shouldn't exist. But as an IndyCar fan, I don't like that they put such a low value on a series that is one of the biggest three motorsports in the world.
Well, I saw somebody mention this. It was designed to keep another Max Verstappen from happening. And yet, at the first challenge, it let another Max Verstappen from happen. It kept out a good driver in an expanding market and somehow allowed a Nikita Mazepin to happen.
I just don't know about this stuff, man.
Kimi Antonelli, his only championship win is in F4.
Oh no, I'm in complete agreement with you.
I'm not saying he's a bad driver, but he's not doing spectacularly in F2.
I think it's a little too soon. Like you said, his only win is in F4. When Max Verstappen came in, he had a win in F. He won the F3 title, and it wasn't that close.
Well, also Max was doing like half seasons of series and getting promoted halfway, and still like being competitive, even though he was only in half of the season.
Yeah. So, I kind of leads into a different discussion. How I'm not sure how on board I am with the Kimi Antonelli hype. I love the idea that we're getting another young, talented driver who may be Mercedes Max Verstappen, but it all seems a little forced. Do you know what I mean, Eli? It all seems like Mercedes really wants him to be a Max Verstappen, and they're not letting him be a Kimi Antonelli. Like, who knows? Maybe Kimi needs a little more experience. Like, maybe if he has more experience, he can grow into a Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton type guy. It's really soon to pressuring this kid who has never won in anything higher than F4 to be the best in the world at what he does.
Yeah, the thing is, Toto has straight up said 100% the reason that they did not give Lewis the deal that he wanted, the reason that they lost Lewis was because they're trying to rush Kimi in.
And you see, it's that R word that a lot of us have problems with.
Yeah, it's the same thing that happened to Sargent. Sargent should have been given a second season in F2. But he wasn't. Because Williams wanted Latifi out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're destroying these people's careers because you're just deciding to you want headlines. Williams wanted first American F1 driver since Scott Speed, and Mercedes.
Is that really a brag?
I mean, most people weren't talking about Scott Speed; they were talking about the Andretti's, but that's a whole other rant for another day.
Yeah. I mean, Scott Speed wasn't even good at NASCAR.
He was okay.
He wasn't good. He wasn't good. Take my word for it. He was not good.
No, it's endurance racing that he's okay. Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, okay.
I remember that he actually did end up doing pretty good in that series. It was WEC. It was supercars.
I feel like WEC is becoming the home for hey, if you're a really talented driver but got your career ruined by a popular motorsport, come drive for us.
Pretty much. But yeah, So, that was my first rant. I'll let you go on to your rant, and then I'll do my other rant.
Okay. This is more therapy than rant. Because I'm going to share the piece of news that Martin Truex Jr. is retiring. And I kind of want to say it feels like a Kimi Antonelli thing where there's no one they're trying to promote really, but I don't know, it just feels like Martin Truex Jr. is almost doing this to appease the public. You know, I like to think he's not. There could be every reason in the world I'm just dumb. But it all just kind of like, he's been getting these, like any older driver does, he's been getting the pressure for, probably since like 2021. Like, hey, like when's it going to be it? And I know he really got a lot of flack last year for deciding to stay because you know how sponsorship works, and the driver is a lot. And if you have a guy like Martin Truex kind of just like dilly-dallying until, the 2 months before the next season starts, a lot of sponsors aren't really happy with that. And so I feel like this year, there was a lot of pressure for him to make a decision really early, kind of like, we're in June. They were kind of wanting to make it sooner than later again. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I like to think it was honest and he was ready to be done. But a part of me also knows that the sponsors really weren't happy with what he did last year, and maybe it was a little more rushed than it needed to be. Where maybe if he had a little more time to think, or was given more time to think, he probably maybe would have had a little more in him. But no, it's whatever.
Sorry, didn't he announce that he's still going to be like an ambassador for JGR though? So the relationship can't be too burnt.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, I don't think it's a JGR problem. I think the sponsors maybe had a little more to do with this because there's a lot of young drivers with Bass Pro ties and stuff like that. But yeah, no, it's whatever. I really like Martin Truex Jr. I mean, most of me growing up was watching him pretty much establish his career as one of the best, so it's kind of sad to see him go. It just seems like yesterday he was, winning between 4 and 8 races a year. And yeah, I mean, and the therapy session part of this is like, they're killing me at this point. Like, this is, they already killed me with Stuart Haas leaving. I'm like, that is my team that's leaving, and now it's like, oh, now one of like basically 3 drivers who are still on the grid from when I was a kid are leaving. And I mean, before that, I mean, it was like, first they decided, or Jimmy Johnson left. I'm like, dang it. And then Kyle Larson comes back and I'm like, dang it. Then the next gen car comes and they have to change the number placement and change the tires, which aren't as good as the old ones. That's a fact. That killed me. Now Kevin Harvick retires. That was the nail in the coffin already, but then they just stomped on this dead horse by ending Stuart Haas and Martin Truex Jr. retiring. So basically, listeners, I am about to go into an existential crisis, and I don't know what my favorite motorsport is going to be other than NASCAR.
Well, before I go on my other rant, I could get the IndyCar news. That might give you something to look forward to next year.
Please, I'm on my last leg. I'm about to go downstairs and like start gorging on sugar. I'm so upset.
Not IndyCar. IndyCar's the rant. Formula E.
Give it to me quick.
Yeah, so basically there were 2 big announcements from Formula E this weekend. One is that Liberty Media's sister company, Liberty Global, which is relevant for reasons that'll come into play, bought a 65% controlling stake in Formula E. The reason that's relevant is because it would have probably been Liberty Media if it weren't for the fact that Liberty Media would have probably gotten sued for antitrust violations. Because Liberty Media owns F1 and MotoGP. The EU was already looking into them for that. So if they bought Formula E, too, probably wouldn't have gone well for them. So their sister company, which is still owned by the same parent company and has like a substantial number of the same board of directors, including the same CEO, bought Formula E. Good news is, Liberty is the ones who made F1 TV, which is a great streaming service, which means that Formula E might finally have competent streaming. Because right now it's on the Roku channel.
You know, I always forget that I can literally watch any Truck Series race on my Roku, and I can watch any Formula E race on my Roku. Instead, I am desperately trying to find a way to get USA Network on my Roku. Meanwhile, there's these other racing series I can watch, I just don't watch them.
Well, also another thing is next year. Something to look forward to.
Uh-oh.
And it's loading, because I can't remember the name of this track exactly, but I know... Homestead! There we go! Formula E's US race is at Homestead, Miami. Homestead, Miami. The infield circuit.
Oh, you see, Eli, I'm happy again.
And they're doing a doubleheader at Monaco, which is the best race of the Formula E season.
You see, you can fix Monaco, you just need to make the car small enough to pass.
They just need to be small enough, be focused on low drag instead of a high downforce, and be electric.
There you go. Formula One, take notes.
But yeah, so there you go.
Thank you, Eli. You know what, Eli? Thank you for making me happy again.
Yeah, no problem. We might have some good streaming for Formula E. It might be more easily accessible. And we've got some good races to look forward to it for next year.
I'm so happy.
Speaking
Eli,
of streaming,
thank you.
I would now like to go onto my IndyCar rant.
I don't think I have any more rants really to say. Go ahead.
All right. So, first of all, because this is technically part of the news section, just like all of these rants have been, we'll start off with good. IndyCar signed its new broadcasting deal for the United States, and they signed it with Fox. And overall, it is a really good deal. They're getting more than they did from NBC. All 17 races are getting 2.5 hours on primetime on the main Fox network, the local channel that anybody can get access to. Except for one race, which is the Indy 500, which has a 4-hour window. Every qualifying session, and I believe some of the practice sessions, are going to be aired on either FS1 or FS2. I think IndyCar qualifying is being aired on main Fox. That's all. Really good stuff. The problem is, United States Motorsports does not understand that it is the 21st century. I will admit, Peacock is not the greatest streaming site in the world. But it's available, and it's not particularly expensive. Fox's is god-awful. You either need a cable subscription or a bundle that will be $50 a month. IndyCar, what are you doing? You complain about not growing your audience, you complain about needing younger people to get their eyes on this, and you decide to prioritize having antenna-based broadcasting. You had 2 major companies in a bidding war over you. I'm pretty sure you could have leveraged that to just maybe have retained streaming rights for yourself. And then, followed in Formula One's footsteps. Because F1 TV has kind of been a major success. Because I'm just gonna point out that if I go into Google, type in F1 streaming, top things, F1.com, F1 TV. DuckDuckGo, F1.com, F1 TV. Bing, Formula1.com, F1 TV. Heck, you know what? I'm going to do something I have not done in I don't even know how long. I'm going to use Yahoo search. F1.com, F1 TV. You go anywhere, you search Formula One streaming. Those are the results that come up. IndyCar, how are you not fighting to have your streaming rights, to have IndyCar TV, or just have the streaming on your website to where you can search it up? Heck, stream them on YouTube. You got channel memberships there, you can charge people for it. You wouldn't even have to pay for the infrastructure yourself. It's the 21st century. You need to understand how the internet works. You have, this series is growing massively in the UK and in Australia. People in the United States are more interested than ever in open wheel racing. You have the golden opportunity to recover from the split. The people who are getting into open wheel racing right now are people who are getting into it because Formula One is on streaming services, because Formula One has Drive to Survive on Netflix, because Formula One has F1 TV. That is why people are getting into racing. If you put that there yourself, remember, F1 is making enough money from F1 TV to have driver cams for every car saved in HD, accessible for every race, to have their own broadcast team doing commentary for every race. I'm not saying it has to be perfect. I'm not saying it has to be to their level. But, you need to be thinking about this. Especially because, fun fact, IndyCar doesn't own their in-car broadcast cameras. They rent them for $14,000 a race.
Wait, what?
Yeah, that's about how much they cost. That's why all of them have title sponsors. Why the camera view has title sponsors, and why only about half the cars ever run them.
That is interesting knowledge to have.
Yeah. I found that out recently, and it's what are you doing? I know that, I know Penske, I know IMS Entertainment, I know they have enough money to be able to not do something as stupid as that. So how are you so lost and out of touch?
I really wish IndyCar could be here to answer your burning question.
Well, also, not only that, their social media presence. Yeah, sure, corporate social media accounts getting in on memes is a bit cringe. I'll admit it. But also, in Monaco, F1, on the broadcast, on the timing table, listed Oscar Piastri as Oscar Piastri Leclerc because of a joke that Leclerc said he would adopt Oscar so that Oscar could have Monaco as a home race. That's funny. That's great. It's kinda hilarious. Does IndyCar ever do something like that? Does NASCAR do something like that? No! It's gotta be all clean and sanitized and corporate approved. They don't want spontaneity. They don't understand how the modern world works. And then they're wondering why all of the people who watch them are just old people and retired people, and then random people who rant about how stupid they are on the internet.
Hey, I take offense to at least that third one right there.
I'm in that group. Heck, I'm more in that group. I'm the one who spent the last, 15 minutes ranting about this. You can do so much better. You just have to, have a competent calendar. Don't spend 2 months off. Next year, we have a 3-week break from the opener to Thermal Club of all races. And then another 2-week break, and then a 3-week break after that. The season ends in August. What are you doing? They're going to be, they have a race next year. Competing with Le Mans.
Okay, now that one is, by all accounts, dumb.
It's all stupid. It's what do you... even the drivers have come out on Twitter and are what are you guys doing? Please tell me that this is just provisional and that there might be some changes, because if not, this is stupid. What's going on? right? Like, there's a lot of good things about the Fox deal. And, you know, maybe it's unfounded. My biggest hope is that Fox treats it like they treat NASCAR and lets them upload it to YouTube 24 hours later, in which case I'm no longer ever going to watch an IndyCar race live. I don't think that's what they want.
It's not what I want.
It's not what I want either. But that's the world we're in. I want to point out, last year, I was paying for 2 different streaming services to watch IndyCar. I was paying for Peacock, and then I was using my VPN to show up in Austria to watch it on, I forget, whatever their beta prototype international streaming service that they had that was honestly completely garbage. But I was paying for 2 different services and using a VPN to watch the races because it was better than, you know, it didn't have ads that it would cut to, missing giant chunks of the race and then come back and I wonder why in the world the field spread was completely different.
I just don't know.
Like, come on.
Well, I don't have much to say on this other than you know what? Ever since I was a kid, I've always just kind of wished that people would be able to have a streaming service that a kid could understand or a kid would enjoy, but I guess not.
That's the thing, is like, let me check the archive on F1 TV. How far back? F1 TV has races all the way back to 1981. It doesn't have all of them. But, like, they have replays back to the 80s that you can just go and watch.
And that's awesome.
Yeah. That's the thing. IndyCar has everything it needs to be a popular series, except for competent leadership. Unfortunately, that's the most important part.
Well,
I told you I had opinions.
Yeah, I'm kind of flabbergasted, honestly, but I don't know. Like I said, growing up, I may be a little less agitated because I feel like a motorsport series will almost never make the decision that's best for everybody or good, and I feel like that's just another case of it here. So it's, I don't know. I don't think the IndyCar series is going to burn. I think people are afraid it's going to burn because of that or other things, but I don't know. I think IndyCar has gotten big enough to where this won't affect them long term, and in a way that's going to do, because that's the thing. I feel like the ultimate goal is let's not dissolve our series, and I don't think this is going to do it. Even though, as annoying as it may be, I think it's just going to be something we have to deal with for a while until hopefully they can quickly get a new deal in place.
I mean, that's my problem, though, is their only concern is let's not have the series dissolve. Like, European TCR racing has more easily accessible streaming services than IndyCar. And I guess part of the reason I care so much about it is the reason that I got back into racing recently is the accessibility of it now.
Isn't that the reason? I mean, guys, let's be real. The reason we got into racing is because it happened to be on TV the day we were thinking about cars, and we enjoyed it so much we wanted to watch it every single week after that.
Yeah, like, the more accessible this is, the better. Which is why I do think it's good that it's, on open-air broadcasting. But the problem is, if you want to keep growing, you also need to be putting that work in online. And they're not. They have no ambition. They're just content to keep existing. I don't want to say they. Penske has no ambition. A lot of the drivers, Pato, Herta, Pillow, are pushing for them to expand. A lot of the team owners, they're pushing for changes, for expansion, for marketing. But Penske bought the series because he wanted to own IMS. He wanted to own the Brickyard. He doesn't seem to really care about IndyCar that much. So
and it's funny you say that because I was gonna say, like, it's funny you say that because I was talking to one of my friends and we were talking about why Penske wasn't having the speed this year. And he said it's because Penske, his heart is in IndyCar. And I will say I can understand why a lot of people wouldn't think Roger Penske's heart isn't in it, or isn't in IndyCar. But the scary thing is, I think it really is. I just think Roger is old enough to where he doesn't want to change. He's kind of the taking the figure of the stubborn old man who kind of just really likes owning the series and can do whatever the heck he wants with it. It's I that, and also combined with humans can't do everything, and when you're trying to manage a NASCAR team, an IndyCar team, and an IMSA team that's going to do the WEC every now and then, it's like it's kind of an empire, but at the same time, it's like I think he likes all of them and probably IndyCar the most, but I think he just doesn't have the time to be a be there manager.
He's doing to IndyCar what Bernie Ecclestone did to Formula One in the later years of his ownership. Completely lost touch.
I think that's a perfect analogy.
He's a control freak that's lost touch.
Mm-hmm. I mean, who doesn't want to be in control? Who doesn't want to be the owner of everything, having their cars dominate everything? I mean, it has to be intoxicating when you win the Indy 500 and Coca-Cola 600 in the same year, and you go on to win the Rolex 24 a year after that. It's kind of like, mwahaha, I am Darth Vader at this point of motorsport.
Yeah, there have been rumors going around that part of the proposed charter system for IndyCar would also be the teams having a stake in the series. And if that's the case, I would be perfectly willing to sacrifice the Indy 500 qualifying for that, because I think it would be better for the series.
I can't really. That's a hard one to swallow because I love Indy 500 qualifying.
Yeah, but frankly, I would rather the Indy 500 just be another race and IndyCar to have just even a tenth of Formula One's popularity. Because
I was going to say, when you were ranting earlier about the super license, I was like on Instagram trying to follow some racing accounts, and F1 has well over, well, I can't remember that. I think it was well over 12 million followers, and IndyCar doesn't even have it. IndyCar has 683,000 followers.
Yeah.
Like, they don't even have a tenth of F1's popularity.
That's the thing, is like, sure, the Indy 500 is great, but they need to quit relying solely on that.
Yeah, I can agree with that, yeah.
And like, even, their attempt at having a Drive to Survive competitor, it only cares about the Indy 500. It builds up to the Indy 500 and then just stops and does not talk about how the rest of the season goes at all. Yeah, no. The IndyCar Twitter account has 493,000 followers, and the F1 account has 10 million.
Once again, it's not even 10%?
Nope.